Hi everyone, this is Heyday Tinker Terry, and welcome to my town. Those of you that have been following the story of Where's Fred know that I have met Fred back in around December of 2019, this year, and I thought that I might tell you a little bit about how Fred and I met. Well, as I said, it was one morning early in December, and I had come to town. I loaded up the truck. They had called me and said they needed some extra blankets and pillows at the bed and breakfast because it was cold, and being December, yes, I'm sure it was. And so I brought them some blankets, and I brought some other things. I at the diner some things they needed, and the cinema, and the bed and breakfast. It wasn't too awful busy that time, if I remember correctly. And so I made those deliveries, and I thought, as I do a lot of times, even though it's very cold in December, I often and also, well, because it wasn't very busy and I had a little extra time, I thought I'd take a walk out on the beach. So I went down the stairs, walkway here, the path, and I stopped on the walkway there. I stopped there, and it was quiet on the beach. There was nobody there except this one man, and I hadn't I didn't recognize him. I hadn't really seen him before. So I just stood there for a minute. Not that I was afraid or anything, being by myself out there with a man early in the morning. I mean, he seemed harmless, and uh, but I started watching him, and I noticed he was standing there stretching and doing, I wouldn't say yoga, but just doing some stretches, like almost like he just got out of bed. And I thought that was strange, and so I just stood there a little bit, and I started to turn to leave, and he turned around, and I kind of got startled a little bit because I noticed that he just kind of had the blackest, waviest hair, and the greenest eyes, emerald green eyes, that kind like you could almost dive into. I was thinking, gosh, if I was a few years younger, I might be interested, but no. He looked to be, from the distance I was, probably in his mid to late 30s, and I was about to turn away, and he said, "Hi." He goes, "Good morning." And I said, "Good morning" back, and um, we just started on a conversation. And so I walked down on the beach to where he was, and we carried on the conversation a little bit longer, and uh, just general things. I asked him how his day or his morning was going so far, and he said, "Well, yeah, I was just stretching, doing some exercises." I said, "I probably look pretty funny to you." And I said, "No, it's a lot of people do that, and I don't know, just chit chat, just general chit chat." And he says, "By the way, would you like a cup of coffee?" And I'm like, "Well," I looked at my watch and thought, "Well, I don't have to be back to the farm just yet." And he seemed like a very, very nice fellow. You know, uh, like I said, it was pretty early morning. The sun had just barely come up, and so, but he just had this feeling about him. I had this feeling that he wasn't, at all a bad person, and I had no reason to be afraid. I mean, yeah, we don't often get a lot of strangers. We see a lot of the same people over and over, but we do occasionally get strangers that come in on the train, and so we're a little weary of that. But but he seemed harmless enough. So I said, well, the shops are closed. The beach cafe is closed. And they don't serve coffee in the gift shop, but the diner might be open. And he goes, oh, no, no, I didn't mean that. He said, I actually have a place over here. And I looked over and I'm like, wow, a tent? And he goes, oh, no, don't let that fool you. He said, I have, and well, he started walking towards the tent, so I just naturally kind of followed. And I was getting a little strange feelings, but I was a little amazed at the same time. I said, "You have a tent there, and no one said anything to you?" And he said, "No, no." He said, "I asked at City Hall and told them that I was just passing through, that I was coming through on the train, and that there was just something about this town that seemed oddly familiar to me. And I asked if they wouldn't mind if I stayed there on the beach, that I had a tent. And at first they were a little bit, hesitant, but I said, look, I promise you I won't bother a soul. If anything, I will gladly help out. I don't plan on staying but a few days, and if anybody has an issue, I'll pack up and leave. I mean, he had this huge blue hiking backpack type thing with the big metal or aluminum rods, and it's like, I don't know how he carried that thing on his back, but he carried his tent and all of his camping gear and his telescope. That one night I actually later, after I got to know him a little bit better, we came out and looked at the stars, and we had some pretty good times, and it was all just innocent fun. No, nothing going on there. Just, but anyway, he made me probably the best cup of coffee I ever had, and I've come to find out that Fred, all this time I've been saying Fred's good at this, Fred's good at that. Fred likes this, Fred likes that. Well, I tell you, there's a reason for that. He made me the best cup of coffee, and I asked him, what is in the coffee? And he said, well, it's just herbs and things that my grandmother taught me a lot of things when I was young and she was still living, and she taught me all kinds of things. And you could tell that he really, really cared a lot about his grandmother, but also that she must have cared an awful lot about him. So I had many cups of coffee there in the first few weeks, and with Fred coming to visit on the mornings that I came to make deliveries. And so we had some really good times. And we also came, and he invited me to go fishing with him. He loves to fish. Like I said, he loves to fish. He would fish. Well, the story of when he came to live with me is, I'll tell you that a little bit later. But he loves to fish. Go out on the boat and fish there in the lake. But he also loves to fish out in the ocean. And so sometimes, well, a couple times, I wouldn't say a lot, but a couple times we came and we would cross over this path and go into this area over here, and we'd bring some lawn chairs, and we would sit and fish and talk, and I learned a lot about Fred. But the thing is, Fred is nice and probably one of the most honest men that I believe I've ever met. But when you go to ask him about his family or things from his past, he just really clams up. And maybe there's just something there that he doesn't like to talk about. Fred is, like I said, seems very honest, very direct, very, forward, reserved kind of, but reserved in the way, I guess, that he doesn't like to talk about his past. And I'm not sure what that's about. If he doesn't want to talk about it, I'm not going to force him. And So, it's just that's one of the strange things about Fred. And also, I had asked Fred. Uh, well, I didn't really want to ask Fred, how he's getting by, but he told me that. Well, I think what I remember now, what I did is I asked him. I said, "Are you working at one of these shops? Is somebody hiring you?" Because I never really, he never really talked about much about working, at least here. He did say he spent a lot of time traveling around on trains, going from town to town, and it kind of made me wonder, how did he support himself? How did he buy food? How did he eat? And so, of course, I didn't want to ask him that directly, but somehow the subject came up, and he was telling me that the way he made money is, again, went back to his grandmother, and here it is in the dead of winter, and he uh, would make these beautiful bouquets of flowers. And I asked him, well, where do you get this? I'm not really familiar with these types of things that you're using. Some of it is, some of it you could get and dry and have, and I assumed he kept probably a lot of it in his tent, which isn't very big, but who knows? But he said no, that he goes to these different places way back in this wooded area, and he picks different wild things, and you wouldn't assume that anything was even alive, worth that's dried out enough and worth picking, but to make bouquets out of. But he would make some of the most beautiful bouquets, and he would take them and he would sell them to like the gift shops, and people would buy them, and he would make just enough to get by, and but people were always asking for more. But it took him a while to go collect all these and to dry out some of the things a little bit, and so he kept enough to just keep himself going, and the town people were happy with that. And also, when the sanctuary animals came, he helped out so much, because he worked with animals at a zoo. He didn't again say where it was, but where he just said where I used to live. I grew up next to a zoo, and so he knew a lot about these animals. And so I'd like to take the time to ask these animals, what do you think of Fred? Oh, you love Fred. Okay, how about you? Oh, I love Fred. That's great. I love Fred. Yes, these animals really, really love Fred. Um, he really did so much for him, and she loves Fred, and that one loves Fred the most. He says, "Oh, these all love Fred." Yeah, he took such good care of them, and let's see, and that one, yes, I love Fred very much. Yes, she does. Because the baby animals, he stayed up nights with a couple of them, with her and him when they were first born, because they had some issues, and he really helped them out, and so he's really made an impact on the town, and so that's why I say everybody loves Fred, because he has done so much, and he's so ingenious with things. He's been such a big help, and I've asked people in the town, if they've seen Fred, and sometimes they'll ask me, have you seen Fred? And we're both, no, I haven't, and they're, it's just so sad, because we really do miss Fred, and we really do hope he comes back. And it's just not like Fred, not to, say, to tell us that he was leaving. Now, I mean, granted, he doesn't tell us a lot about his past, but he left his tent. He left, um, I mean, his backpack is gone. We don't see that anywhere, but everything else is there. I mean, that's basically his whole life. Even his gnome. He had a gnome. It was like one of these, one of the yellow, the male gnomes. He had one of those, and he loved that gnome. He loves that gnome so much. And one time he started to tell the story about it, and he cut himself off. He just stopped in his tracks and wouldn't go any further with it. So I guess there's a story behind that, but right now I just don't know what it is. And Fred is full of stories like that, of non-stories, I guess you can call them, that he's just kind of starts to talk about, because that's Fred, free-flowing, easygoing Fred, but then he'll come across something, start talking about it, and all of a sudden clam up. And that I mean, it kind of had me worried then, but I figured he had, that was his, that was up to him. I didn't want to press anything. But it just really, really makes me wonder where Fred had up and gone to without saying a word to anyone. He hasn't said a word to anyone that I know of. And so I really do hope Fred comes back. And I just thought I would tell you a little bit about how Fred and I met. And it's just we've had an amazing friendship, and I would like to continue that friendship, or at least if he's not coming back, to send word of perhaps, even if he can't say why he left, at least just let us know he's okay. And there's a little bit more to tell about Fred and our times and before he came to work for me, but we'll save that for another time. And I just hope the best for Fred. And if you've seen him or think you've seen him, please leave a comment in the comment box, and I'll be glad to go check out anything that you might leave in the box, and I'd appreciate your help. I really would. And I really hope you've enjoyed the story of how I met Fred, and just only a few of our of the little bit of time we spent together. And I hope that was kind of interesting to you. And until next time, I hope you will comment, like, and subscribe if you would be so kind, and tap the bell notification. And until next time, wherever you are in your part of the world, I hope you're doing well. Day, night, evening, morning, weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.